So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to this third session of a very important Build Back Better Sector Dialogues hosted and created by Asian Development Bank. And this edition would be focusing primarily on power sector. My name is Amit Tripathi. I'm advisor power sector sitting at the Secretariat of Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. For the benefit of an audience and everyone, CDRI is an international organization which primarily focuses on building resilience and adaptive capacity in the critical infrastructure space, such as power sector, telecommunication, health, uh, and transportation. What we are doing primarily, we are supporting our members. Right now, we are a member of 40 countries, and we are primarily focusing on three key parameters of building resilience in critical infrastructure space. One is the physical climate data and guidance. So for example, our biennial report and GIRI tool, which is Global Risk Informed Infrastructure Indices, which primarily identify the gaps in existing climate-related data and develop a well-defined specification to enable development around critical infrastructure. We are also doing critical infrastructure system and assessed vulnerability assessment. And through our power sector work, and in right now we are currently doing in telecom as well, where we are trying to demonstrate and pilot test the common approach with the published guidance and framework for using climate-related data for the specific critical infrastructure systems. And then we are also trying to help our members in resilience and adaptation planning and prioritization. Before I sort of introduce the house rules for the Asian development for this session, I'll quickly take you through my sort of a 2 cents and 2 points on what's important for resilient power infrastructure through our limited experience of working in this space. And traditionally, we have seen that power sector, and which for right reasons, have been primarily focusing on three key parameters. One is availability, another is affordability, and third is reliability. And that's something power system planner, designer all over the world have been focusing to deliver this to their end consumers and to the citizens. But looking at some of the risk profiles, these in last 1 or 2 decades, and the amount of damages that has incurred, we have sort of seen it's important to add another R, which is resilience, and looking at how climate change can impact the systems in order to deliver better services to its citizens. The house rules for today is, please, your microphone will be muted unless you are invited to speak. Please use the question and answer function in Zoom. If you'd like to ask a question, I will direct these to the speakers. Today's session will be recorded and shared on the event website. This is for this information for everyone. So before before I move to sort of to our next speaker, this is going to be a very interesting and very informative dialogue where we have a practitioners from the ground trying to tell us what needs to be done in order to build back better in the power sector. So I'd like to hand over to Cindy Tianjo. She's Energy Sector Officer, Director at Asian Development Bank, to provide some opening remark. In her time at ADB, Cindy had led a wide range of innovative initiatives, including pioneering the renewable energy initiatives in Central Asia and West Asia, including Afghanistan and Uzbekistan. And in the Pacific, Cindy is leading ADB's first energy projects in Kiribati and Tuvalu. So over to you, Cindy, and look forward to your opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Amit. Good morning, everyone. A warm welcome to all the attendees, partners, and clients, ADB colleagues, and speakers. Thank you for joining us today for the third session of Build Back Better Sector Dialogues. As shared by Amit, my apologies. Okay, as shared by Amit, this event, along with Volume 6 of the BBB series, aims to provide ADB stakeholders, clients, and staff with practical guidance on delivering effective and well-designed post-disaster assistance for the power sector. It highlights the importance of climate and disaster-resilient recovery, alongside objectives of accelerating clean energy transition, accessibility, and power system security, among others. Power systems in Asia and the Pacific experienced considerable damage and interruption resulting from extreme weather events and geophysical hazards. This disruption compounds disaster losses with wide impacts across many sectors, from health to transport, telecommunications, food production and delivery, water provision to wastewater treatment. It can also lead to secondary hazards like electrical fires and flooding due to pumping system disruption. Build Back Better efforts reflect the recovery and reconstruction of critical power infrastructure to meet higher standards of resilience to climate change and disaster events, and at the same time, leverage the current global and developing member countries' energy transitions. In the last 20 years, ADB had disbursed over $120 million for post disaster recovery and reconstruction in the power sector. ADB's work in the energy sector has played a critical role as Asia and Pacific's Developed Climate Bank as we actively scale up our support to member countries on boosting access to transition to cleaner energy. ADB has been responding to rapidly changing energy needs in Asia and the Pacific with its 2021 energy policy, which guide its operations to support energy access improvement and low carbon transition in the region. Principle 2 of the energy policy sets out that ADB will provide support to its member countries to tackle climate change, enhance environmental sustainability, and build climate and disaster resilience. This policy highlights that while shifting to more resilient solutions, such as enhanced grid redundancy and more resilient distribution methods, may seem costly in many developing country contexts, failing to invest in resilience measures can lead to higher life cycle costs because of infrastructure failure and rebuilding needs after extreme events. Last October 2024, ADB also published its Disaster Risk Management Action Plan, setting out an ambitious roadmap for ADB to further enhance resilient investments, effective post-disaster assistance, and strategic upstream efforts, such as national power system climate disaster risk assessments and resilient investment plans and capacity building. These messages and many more will be highlighted today. I hope you enjoyed today's session and actively join in today's discussion to share your own views, experiences, and insights on how we can work together to promote sustainable and resilient power systems as part of disaster recovery, as well as broader development efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you so much for your opening remarks and sharing your remarkable work, ADB's remarkable work in this space, especially ADB's leadership in the region and through assistance on how to sort of and where to invest specifically in order to make systems resilient, I think would be very critical in next decade to come, because ADB would be investing a lot in energy transition systems, and that would require a lot of sort of a critical thinking in how to design and develop the power systems with renewable energy being in center of all the scheme of things. Being a power sector practitioners, I know it's not easy because the variable nature of renewable itself, but the leadership and the investment by ADB in region will provide lot of learning for the for the for the all the countries globally, specifically the learning from Pacific that can translate for Indian Ocean and Caribbean region, specifically for the small island developing states. So look forward to ADB's leadership in this space for next couple of decades in order to show world how to build a better infrastructure in the region, which are suffering lot of climate risk and geophysical risk. So thank you so much, Cindy. So we move to the next sort of next part of our session, and which is quite interesting. There is a questionnaire which my colleague Mish would be sharing it on the screen, and it's an audience poll, and so which specifically talks about what in your view would be a sort of a important aspect of resilience. So which area of power sector resilience have you been most involved in? So sharing your sort of a feedback on this would help us sort of what's going on in this field, what's the landscape of resilience in the region. So thank you, Mish. So over to the audience. We'll wait for a few couple of sort of 45 seconds to 1 minute in order for you to complete the poll. Thank you. Yeah. So we'll wait for a few seconds more for people who must have just joined or are trying to sort of think more about the poll. So yeah, interesting. So as we see, as the results have been out, so so of course everything is important. I think if I had an choice, I would be sort of working in all those five things that ADB and the MISH ADB's team have just put across. Distributed energy and microgrids are very important because the very nature of islands and that brings the energy security into the picture. Resilient transmission and distribution is very critical because that's something which sort of create sort of ecosystem for a very resilient last mile connectivity to the end user, resilient equipment which feeds into and everything that we build in. System level initiatives is critical. Regulatory capacity, building codes, standards, and etc. are very critical because that leads into the how we build the infrastructure and how better we are prepared. And power system operation and maintenance and capacity building again is very important important factor. But system level initiative that have come out very openly uh, is is uh, is very critical for our audience. So with moving to the next session, the next part of the session, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, David Van Hoppel, to provide an overview on the key principle and solutions that are set out in the Build Back Better guide for the power sector. ADB has worked on a very informative and a simple sort of a guide which can help practitioners in order to design their system better or nudge them to think towards building resilience in their system. David has over 35 years of experience and since 2013 had been supporting Asian Development Bank and a wide range of international organization agencies on resilience of energy systems, infrastructure under the changing climate and geophysical risk. David was a lead author for the Build Back Better Power Sector Guide. Over to you, David, and look forward to your presentation and discussion uh, on the Build
Okay.
Back Better Power. Thank you, David.
All right. Thank you very much, Amit, and thank you to my ADB colleagues for giving me the opportunity to present before you. So I'm talking about the power sector, of course, which is the main topic here, and start with just this table that shows that disaster effects and recovery needs just from these four disasters that have happened in the last 15 years range into the billions of dollars. And of those, the power sector can account for up to almost all of the recovery needs in some cases. But the power sector is a very important component of disaster recovery needs and effects in most disasters. So the key objectives for post-disaster recovery and reconstruction of power systems, first you want to take advantage of the opportunity to build back better, to accelerate the clean energy transition, and in so doing, reduce greenhouse gas emissions and air pollutant emissions, and increase energy independence. So those are key factors. You also want to improve access, consumer access, business access to the power system, and this can be both on the supply and demand side, as well as the affordability of power for all. And to have it's an opportunity also to adopt new technologies. And in so doing, generate new and more diverse opportunities for employment, for example. So have opportunities for installing solar photovoltaic systems in various places and various scales. It's also an opportunity to enhance the power system security and improve the efficiency of the power system. In order to deliver these Build Back Better projects in post-disaster contexts, there are various considerations that will come into play depending on the particular opportunity. One is that there may be new stakeholders and new opportunities after a disaster than really existed before a disaster. the opportunity to rebuild, and that gives you a chance to rethink how you provide the energy services that a power sector offers. There may be shifts in project landscapes through technological change, as photovoltaics, for example, or wind power becomes less expensive, as storage becomes less expensive. It changes the relative options that you have, and also, of course, the changing climate itself. You may need to put things in a different place, as by consideration of sea level rise, for example. There may be barriers to change that affect how you make build back better decisions, how you build back better projects, and they may be legal, institutional, or policy barriers, and those may need to be addressed as you move along with planning. There may be changing consumption profiles, different end uses that need to be met that occur at different times during the day, and that may affect your power system choices. And those may change with changes in population, or changes in the economy, changes in technologies, or population movement as populations become more urban, as they have been, as an example, or maybe have to move from one place to another as some places become unlivable under climate change. Then it gives you an opportunity to address the risks of digital attacks against power systems, to cybercrime against power systems. Now, there are a range, and Amit mentioned these, there are a range of measures that can be applied in Build Back Better opportunities. There, you can use more distributed electricity generation and storage technologies, such as photovoltaics, and these decentralized power systems offer fewer potential single points of failure, and thus tend to be more disaster resilient. You can adopt microgrid technologies for electricity distribution in local areas, or for specific facilities, such as key facilities such as hospitals. This increases the resilience of power systems to disasters and routine hazards alike, and it also helps to get services restored more quickly in the event of a disaster. If you have a microgrid that is still operating, whereas part of the grid goes out, then you have an opportunity to use your hospitals, use your food provision stations, your water pumping, in some locations, and that can help the services to get back online more quickly. Just to remind you that energy efficiency and demand reduction are also options for Build Back Better, in that the less electricity you need to provide a certain energy surface, such as lighting a room or cooking a meal, the less you need, the more your reduced supplies may be reduced by disaster can go further. And it's often the cheapest way to extend supply and to provide for energy services. This can include non-electric devices such as solar water heaters, and also you can include electric vehicles both as demand centers, that is providing transportation, but also as providing storage of electricity that can be used for other types of end uses, such as charging cell phones, or other communications, or providing lighting. Then resilient transmission and distribution systems, for example, can include storage, where you can provide electricity storage, or could include improved components of the system, such as transformers and substations. It can also include, as in this image, more robust overhead transmission lines or underground lines, improved maintenance, or mesh configurations, which provide more options if some lines go out, to heal the transmission system and make it work again. A combination of smart features and controls and sensors can be installed at the point of Build Back Better, and as well as software to help identify and isolate trouble spots in the grid. You can also install and relocatable and customizable services. So, for example, in this image, you have wind systems that can be tilted down rather rapidly and kept out of harm's way as a typhoon passes, then brought back up when the typhoon danger is past. So you can use transportable equipment to help in particular areas that are affected by a disaster, and using that equipment in the longer term, or when that equipment is no longer needed, you can move it to a different place. So look at systems that can be moved out of harm's way prior to extreme weather events and be returned post disaster. Then Ahmed also mentioned building codes and other resilience standards for equipment. So if you have to replace equipment that is damaged or destroyed during a disaster, choose equipment that meets higher resilience, safety, and efficiency standards, and that will help in the long run, as well as for survivability of the next disaster. So environmental and safety benefits as well as survivability are keys here. You also, this is an opportunity to help vendors understand the requirements for these higher requirements for equipment, buildings, and other demand and supply devices, and to have those services available and ready in a timely manner to respond to a disaster. Also, you want to address system dependencies in a post-disaster investment and try to avoid key interdependencies that may be difficult to overcome. So, for example, if you have backup generators that depend on a single source, a single storage area of diesel fuel, that's an interdependency that can maybe be avoided when the opportunity for Build Back Better comes along. You might also include emergency or redundant generation and transport, provision of isolated or isolatable supplies for key facilities, and update and reinforce the supply systems when you're replacing damaged wiring and equipment. Then additional measures are to improve the power sector control and monitoring modeling systems so that you have better control over a system as a disaster is impending, and so you can shut off areas that may be vulnerable, or and also to bring the system back up more quickly. Accelerate the deployment of smart grid technologies and control hardware and software to do this. And then finally, but very importantly, you want to build power sector human capacities, and of course the technologies that support them. That is technical management and planning skills that are needed both for routine operation of the power sector and also in disaster recovery. And here, these new technologies and practices will require new training and new capabilities of the power system personnel. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, David, for sort of throwing your slides and trying to sort of give us some brief and just around the extensive, and I would request audience to go through that guide. It's very important. It's, as I said earlier, it's simple to understand, and that could require you to sort of think towards and nudging you think towards how to build resilient power system. From David's intervention, there are a few key things which came out sort of quite starkly, quite openly, and which I can relate to the experience of mine also working in this field from last few years. Is it's very important for utilities and power sector practitioners to build and very robust but simple to implement standard operating procedures for Build Back Better at the time of, during, and post disaster need recovery and reconstruction. This really helps and enables utilities to sort of to plan better, because generally we see it's very difficult during any recovery and reconstruction period to build back better. It's not easy because of course you are fighting against the time. in order to provide services to the end users, and that puts a lot of pressure on the practitioners, the people on the ground, in able to provide it. So a lot of time in our experience also we have seen that build back but better doesn't happen as it intended. So that's why the utilities need to be very prepared with a very robust standard operating procedures and guidelines, and which includes also giving proper capacity strengthening trainings to the end users, as David rightly mentioned. Second, I think use of technology. There are outage management systems out there right now globally available. Integrating it with the impact-based forecasting with the climate risk data. It's very important for utilities to be aware where it will impact the most, and then how to address that issues with a better disaster preparedness. Resource inventory is very important, and that goes back to the point, my first point of building standard operating procedures. Have a proper, better resources of an inventory in order to build back better, because at the time of disaster you don't have time to pool in resources of a better quality and things. So be prepared with the critical infrastructure pieces where you know where it will impact the most, and build back the better accordingly. And 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 the third, it's also of course we talk about large infrastructure spaces, but large weather events, but there are slow onset events such as extreme heat waves. It's important to incorporate that as well. In a country like India, we have seen balance shifting towards peak demand side. We have hot day and hot night concept. So of course, peak demand has shifted late in the night, but the solar power and renewable energy generation isn't available after a certain point of the time, and that put pressures on the system, power system planners and grid managers. So it's very important to plan accordingly while you design your system around the renewable energy system. So these are my quick points from the David's presentation, which was really, really insightful. I will again request team to audience to actually go through that guide. With this, I move to Andrew. Thank you, David, again for the invitation. Andrew is a senior manager at Tonga Power Limited, where he oversees strategic planning and business development and the major project department. And in his role, pivotal role, Andrew supports the acting chief executive officer in effectively managing the national's renewable energy transition project. So very, very important role that Andrew is playing in order to take Tonga's power system to the more carbon mitigative effort. Uh, a reminder to post your question to all our speakers in a Q&A or a chat box, and we'll come to this after all the presentations are over. Over to you, Andrew, to take us through to build back better case studies on Tonga Cyclone Gita recovery. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Amit, and for the introduction, and good morning, and also good afternoon to all of you who are tuning in from this part of the world in the Pacific. And TPL from Tonga Power Limited side, we're very privileged to be part of this guide that is very, very useful to assist not only small island developing states, but also our fellow Pacific Island countries who are also going through same impacts, especially with regards to the case study that I will be going over today in my presentation. Tonga Power Limited's efforts in building back better. My short presentation, I'll give you a context of Tonga and its power grid. I believe some of the participants aren't aware of where Tonga is located, so I'll give some context into where Tonga is and also the state of our power grid. And I'll also go into just a brief overview of the impacts of the disaster tropical cyclones that we faced in the past 10 years, and also the resilience initiatives that we successfully conducted alongside ADB to overcome some of these challenges. Lastly, I'll also touch base on some of our gender inclusion efforts, as well as some of the key takeaways that hopefully will be helpful with those who are attending this webinar. So firstly, if you can see this graph, I'm sorry it's a little bit pixelated, but this is just a picture showing in these 4 circles here is the Kingdom of Tonga being divided into 4 main island groups. So there's the Babao group here, and also the Hapai group, and also and in the very bottom is the main island of Tonga Tapu, and right next to it is Ewa, which is the other grid that Tonga Power is looking after. So just to give some context, these are the 4 main island groups, consist of around 176 islands, with 36 of these total islands habited, approximately 100,000 population. So as some of you may be aware, Tonga is one of the most vulnerable countries, as rated in the World Disaster Risk Index. I believe in 2021 we were in the top 3. And if we have a look at this graph over here, these were the 2 main cyclones that was included in this guide. Tropical Cyclone Ian, 2014, in this group of island here in Hapai, and also Cyclone Gita, January 2018, which impacted most of the main grid. So just to give a context into the status of our power distribution infrastructure, before the tropical cyclone, our distribution infrastructure was already at disarray. Most of the distribution infrastructure has been there since the 1970s, and most of the time it's only upgrades mostly conducted post-cyclone. And before the main strategic framework that was used for this for Tonga's energy transition was the Tonga Energy Roadmap transition, which began in 2010 to 2020. So when this roadmap started, Tonga's line loss was around 18 to 20%, which is fairly quite high. And there was a lot of unreliability in terms of our power supply due to the aging distribution assets. So when these cyclone hit, Tropical Cyclone Ian Category 5 hit, as well as Tropical Cyclone Gita hit. These were Category 5 and Category 4 cyclones. So, as expected, there was a big impact that it had on damages that occurred in the grid, which resulted in 90%, as shown in the slide, 90% of the power infrastructure being destroyed in 2014, as well as 2018 Category 4 cyclone, Tropical Cyclone Gita. And this took approximately 5 weeks to restore power to majority of these customers. So building back better was a really key guiding factor towards Tonga Power Limited's strategic priority planning. Not building back better tomorrow, but building back better today. So of course, in the strategic framework, the Tonga Energy Roadmap, it already indicated the amount of decentralized generation sites from renewable energy that was to be integrated to the grid. And also number 2, the areas that needs to be upgraded in the distribution network, not only for the main island of Tonga Tapu, but also the outer islands of Va'u, Hapai, and also Ewa. But as we all know, for small island developing states, especially us here in the Pacific, one of the biggest, as rightly mentioned by Amit, one of the biggest challenges is the financial resources that's required to building back better. So it was quite fortunate for us and unfortunate as well in the same time. But the cyclone that impacted our islands also enabled us access to donor fundings through the Asian Development Bank, as well as the government of New Zealand, which enabled us to upgrade most of our network to Cyclone Gita into a more resilient structure, which we'll go through in the next slide, as well as Cyclone Gita. So in this slide, I believe this picture here is I believe is the most is a good description of what a high level of resilient electricity infrastructure is. As you can see, our distribution cable, there's a big coconut tree that's just leaning on the cables, and these cables here are the new cables that was introduced post cyclone that is more resilient, which is the area bundle cables that was implemented, and also drawn into our framework of our network upgrade programs post these two main cyclones. So this photo was taken post Tropical Cyclone Harold in 2020. This was 2 years later since Tropical Cyclone Gita, which I mentioned in the previous slide. So we can see very clearly that there's been resilience and robustness in recovery journey since just 2 years ago, 2018. And it's quite evident in the way Tonga has combated the recent cyclones and natural disaster. As mentioned before, the line losses were about 18 to 20%, and as of 2020, we reduced it down to 9% with this network upgrade projects, which we've collaborated closely with the Asian Development Bank in implementing. So so these here are the three main, I would say, the key resilience initiatives that we pursued. Number one, our transition from overhead service lines to underground service lines to homes. And number two is the replacement of overhead lines from the open wire standard to aerial bundle cables, which you see here in this picture. And as from our experience, these cables have been very resilient and durable during cyclones that have occurred in the past 3 to 4 years after Tropical Cyclone Gita. And reconnection times post cyclone has been very short in comparison to Tropical Cyclone Gita, which took up to 5 weeks. So from 5 weeks to just below 1 week of reconnection is evident of the resilience of this key initiative that we have of building back better. So for us, this was one of our key success, I would say, key success story from building back better with and utilizing appropriately the funds that were allocated to the Kingdom of Tonga. Another area I want to touch base on is enhancing the gender inclusion in our recovery efforts. This has always been an area that Tonga Power has been a role model in the Pacific in pushing gender equality, specifically women empowerment in these STEM fields. This is usually not a traditional area where there's a lot of women participating in, but we're happy to be pushing through and including more women in our recovery efforts. And it's evident from just a few years ago where there was only about five or six women, up until now where we have about almost 30 women as permanent lines women operating the field, which you see in these photos over here. So as of now, we have approximately 18% of women in project teams, and we're hoping that by the end of the year, we'll reach 20%. So we're seeing a lot of key actions, such as women actively participating in the line crews, and we have a vision to have a full-on lineswomen team managing their own bucket trucks and teams looking after their own areas of network upgrades. There's been a lot of senior lineswomen mechanics that have been promoted as part of this network upgrade projects. And we're also seeing an increase in interested females taking up technical studies in the local technical institutions, which is good awareness opportunity for women to increase their participation in technical roles here in Tonga. So this is my last slide, and sorry, Amit, if I'm taking more of the time that's been allotted to me, but the key takeaways, similar to the point that yourself and David had mentioned, was strategic planning. I would say strategic planning, disaster budgeting. I would say is very important and a key lesson for Tonga and also Pacific Island states. There's been usually what's a common theme in developing states is when there's a lot of donor funds, there's a lot of reliance that when there's this disasters occur, there's always going to be donors coming back to fund these assets. But as shown in the guide that was provided by David, it's very important that management takes its own efforts as well into effectively planning the annual budgets to also ensure that there's stockpiling of essential resources like repair kits, spare parts, and materials to be ready in country for when the tropical cyclone season comes. And I think it's quite fortunate for us here in Tonga and also in the Pacific Islands, that we have a set out disaster season, which is from November till March. So this gives us enough time for effectively planning. But it's also important to note that donors play a big part in ensuring that government targets are met, because although we will be increasing our budgets, there's also the question of affordability to customers that is questioned. So ensuring that the right balance is kept would also build more resilience in the strategic planning for utilities. So as mentioned by David as well, pre-positioning of resources. This is one of the biggest learning lessons that have really helped us quickly restore power by having them located areas such as coastal areas to effectively and efficiently conduct maintenance works as soon as possible. There's also continuous training and capacity building that's required, because there's no use of building back better if the structure that's being built back better is not maintained. So yes, as mentioned by David and Amit, very important that the training protocols are refreshed on a quarterly basis to workers. And that's some of the key areas that we at Tonga Power Limited are continuing to progress. Leveraging partnerships is also a key area as well for Tonga Power Limited. We work closely in maintaining our partnerships with our donor partners such as ADB, not only just limited to grant-funded projects, but we're also looking at areas for technical assistance, because we know that this is an evolving grid. So there's always need for leveraging partnerships and collaboration with donors. And lastly, just my final point is the importance of community engagement in disaster recovery. So this was one of the key areas that really increased customer satisfaction, was continuous communication of the progress of our recovery efforts. And this has been an area that the team has really worked on prioritizing in the past few cyclones that we had. So I believe that brings me to the end of my presentation, and thank you for your attendance Over to you, Amit.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. I think the ground level practitioners and utilities perspective in this is very, very critical, especially your experience of working from small island developing states, uh, looking at your challenges and limitations of your remoteness. Uh, brings up a very very important question of how to be prepared better. I think that's very important. Like for example, large country like India, I think help is quicker because of course they are integrated as one large country. But in a remote areas such as Tonga's, I think quickly deploying the resources in order to build back better is quite challenging. And then your insight on how you reduced the recommissioning of a system from 5 weeks to 1 week is itself a remarkable achievement and feat and a great benchmark for the islands in order to sort of showcase that how if you invest specifically in disaster preparedness, that can enable utility community for very effective recovery and reconstruction and build back better. So as you sort of rightly pointed out, David also earlier in his presentation pointed out, preparedness is a key, because of course you face this challenge every year again and again and again. And it's not easy for always to be in a war mode, but that you as a community and as a country are able to achieve that by reducing the timeline. I think that's a kudos to everyone, to entire Tonga, to in order to do that, because critical infrastructure plays a key role. Without power and its interdependency to other infrastructure, I think a lot of things will not work, and even the recovery and reconstruction efforts sort of tends to sort of fall back if we are not able to provide the power on a right time. Another thing also was very sort of very sort of I found it very interesting, and like by bringing, I won't say these some of the technologies that have used, it's not new. They're innovative and which are there in the market, to use them to sort of upgrade the system to build back better, and which is a learning without investing in a very expensive technology. By just introducing, for example, XL bundle cable, ABC cables into the systems, you are able to reduce the damages to the systems post any disaster, and that itself shows that you don't need to sometimes sort of do a lot more. Many things can be done with a limited resource and the technologies that are already available to everyone. So thank you so much for bringing your practitioner's perspective from the ground, and once again kudos to you for able to do what you're able to do in Tonga. So with that, we move to the last edition of our session of our Build Back Better session on power sector. And I once again thank you, Andrew, for his presentation. We'll now move to the panel discussion, and for that, as I said earlier, uh, we had requested audience to post your question to the Q&A or a chat box, which will be picked up, and we'll ask questions to the to our panelists. The request is that please also, if to whom you are addressing that question, that would be great. Uh, so yeah, so we'll wait for a couple of minutes to to look if somebody has posted any questions. Yeah, thank you. Sure. So, meanwhile, as we wait for audience to post the questions on a chat box, I'll sort of ask few questions to our panelists here. So, Cindy, that once again, thank you for being here and sharing your experience insights from what ADB has been doing in the region. So, for that, I have a question. As you said, you have been very closely working with the country and country government and utilities to develop roadmaps for resilience and adaptive innovative solutions. For example, floating solar in Pacific. I think that's something as a great initiative as land is scarce in some of these small island places. So floating solar can act as a sort of a lot of a great things and value to the country. So in your experience, what is needed to enable these new technologies to be scaled up, to be adopted successfully in this country? So please share your insight and experience. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Amit. But firstly, I'd like to also congratulate Andrew and Tonga Power Limited for their leadership, really, in this in building back better. And not only that, they have been a leader in many other respects in the energy sector, including private sector participation and even adapting innovative technologies. And one of them essentially is floating PV. So we're talking about floating PV. Before I transferred to the Pacific region, I worked in Central Asia, where I also developed the roadmap for floating PV there, freshwater PV. And so when I transferred to the Pacific, the first thing I did was to see how we can replicate that initiative in the Pacific, especially with their land constraints. And it was no-brainer to actually look at the water for increasing access to energy and increasing generation in the Pacific. And in fact, it was TPL that was the first to actually raise their hand. And they were very interested in the technical assistance, which I later then developed that did the roadmaps as well as develop projects in 11 Pacific Island countries. 2 of them have already been approved in Kiribati and Tuvalu, and Tonga, I think, is coming. The project in Tonga is programmed for next year. So hopefully that will also come to fruition. So to answer your question, apart from increasing awareness, building knowledge and institutional capacity, not only on that technology, but more comprehensively, I believe what's important is early engagement. We need to be there at the beginning with our stakeholders, with our teams, and we need to coordinate closely and collaborate within ADB with other development partners and our DMC clients to be able to deploy these innovative technologies at scale. These, of course, are also critical for optimizing development assistance. And when you have a region that has very similar challenges, it also makes it important to look at aggregation, to look at combining small projects, for example, to get the economies of scale, and also standardization of standards and best practice and specifications. So that's exactly what we did for the floating PV roadmap and deployment in the Pacific. And in fact, we are also innovating on the approaches as to procurement. So we are, for Kiribati and Tuvalu, doing the first regional procurement, which means that you will have more, you attract bigger and I guess better contractors to develop the projects, to install the projects, because there's a larger amount of the projects and the contracts that they're going to get. So that's one of the key things to enable these new technologies to be adopted successfully.
Yeah. So thank you, Cindy, for your sort of insight and take on the questions. There is one question from an audience, and then I think that's related to ADB too. So I'll post to you, Cindy, and it's around whether ADB is it's working or can provide disaster risk insurance for energy sector, specifically for the green energy, if you think so, or are you planning to do, or what do you think about that? Over to you, Cindy.
Thank you. Very, very good question. Actually, insurance is one of the key things that ADB has been looking at and exploring as to how we are able to do this more broadly and widely, and also as a standard. So what we have done previously, of course, was to look at very specific, for example, projects and contexts, or executing, implementing agencies. So the insurance that we provide will be very specific to that particular context or project. But I believe, elsewhere in the bank, especially our finance and our PSOD, of course, are looking into insurance for resilience and disaster recovery. But apart from that, of course, ADB has what we call the emergency assistance that is agile enough to be able to provide assistance to post-disaster recovery for our DMCs.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. Thank you so much. There's another audience question. I think I would because it's on some of the theoretical on around Build Back Better. So I'll post it to David. David, the question as it is there any experience of integrating climate projection in Build Back Better planning, and how was it utilized? Um, Please do share your sort of insight on it. Thank you. You're on mute, David. Sure.
Sorry, I'm trying to recall that going on, but of course there has been quite a lot of integrating climate projections into projects that actually have Build Back Better sort of in their thoughts. So, for example, in Mongolia, we looked at a transmission line project and we wanted to consider what would happen with challenges such as landslides, and how that would be uh, that would be that might change in the case of, for example, loss of permafrost. Not exactly applicable to island nations, but part of the Asia Pacific region. So I think throughout the ADB portfolio, there's the thought of building back better being in the back of your mind as you're looking at any project, and any project pretty much has to look at climate change.
Yeah, thank you, David. I think to that also, if I can add, and with your permission,
Sure.
at the CDRI Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, we did a very comprehensive large project in state of Odisha, which is prone to the cyclones every year. It's on the East Coast, and we mapped entire asset from 765 kV till 11 kV on an entire coast of 500 kilometers, from 0 to 60 kilometers of the coast. And what we were able to do, so what we did was primarily trying to develop a comprehensive investment prioritization risk-based matrix, which offered guidelines for the risk-based method for these investment across the transmission and distribution sectors. And what we came out with a lot of recommendations on where to invest. And what we also did, we tried to sort of map to the 50 years return period and 100 years return periods with the risk of cyclone and flooding. And with that, we were able to sort of come up a very detailed, comprehensive analysis of where the investment need to be made, and also then the working on the back end of it, what are the regulatory provisions, what are the building standards and codes need to be changed, and so on and so forth. So yeah, so audience can look. We have provided a sort of link uh, at the first instance by the mesh at the start of the session. So with that, as we are moving close to this interesting session, I will ask one more last question to Andrew. Andrew, what are continuity planning and disaster preparedness requires strong engagement across all level of government and community and private sector itself. In your experience, how has TPL able to achieve it? Because as you mentioned, from 5 weeks to 1 week, I think it's remarkable. So please share your insight and experience on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amit. And we've, to be honest, from Tonga's side, it's planning is, I would say, some of our disaster preparedness strategies is it's not a one size fits all strategy. It's a strategy that has to be reviewed on an annual basis because as it's evident, disasters are becoming more unpredictable, and the natures of the disaster is changing on an annual basis. I'll just give an example. For instance, as I mentioned earlier, one of the key success stories of that we owed to that reconnection time to from 5 weeks to 1 week was, this change in our distribution infrastructure layout design to the ABC bundles. But then that was resilient against tropical cyclones. But then once the eruption happened in 2022, the volcanic ash actually had a really big impact on the ABC bundle cables that really caused a lot of damages to some portion of the grid. So that clearly identifies the important need for us. We usually have a strategic planning retreat every year where we review our disaster recovery plans. So everything has to be integrated into everything that we do, and also updated every year according to the natures of disasters that we're experiencing. So some of these updates are also integrated to our project. New projects that are being integrated to the grid, such as our network upgrade projects, that's still ongoing as part of our Tonga Energy Roadmap. These key learning lessons are being integrated to that, not only on a company level but also on a state level as well.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you so much. And again, as I said, I've taken a lot from what you did with the simple measures, and definitely I will come back to learn more from you and what you're doing so that we can scale it up. I think we should scale the approach that Tonga has used and bring it to all across. Like we have a 57 small island developing states globally. I think they need to learn more. And it's just as you demonstrated, simple things can make lot of difference. So thank you very much. So with that, unfortunately, we have to end this very interesting session. And thank you very much, and thank you everyone, especially David, Cindy, Andrew, and an entire team of ADB to able to sort of bring together such a rich conversation from the practitioners' utility on ground to the larger sort of a systemic level intervention through Build Back Better guides such as yours. I think we were able to demonstrate where we have to sort of approach and work. So with that, so we end this session. The presentation and the event recording will be uploaded to ADB's events website. Please see the link in the chat as Mitch posted. And as I said, that very interestingly, this was interesting. Just imagine the next Build Back Better sector dialogue focusing on integrated agriculture sector, which will be held in early February. The dates would be out soon. And so please check our website, ADB's website and our website for more details. And thank you again, once again, for participating, and have a great day. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.